Representative Tong, Senator Kissel, ladies and gentlemen of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Cathy Ludlum, and I am here to voice my opposition to HB 7015. You may be wondering why the disability community is so dedicated to stopping this legislation. Believe me, we recognize the complexities involved here. Nobody wants people to be dying in pain, desperate, feeling that they have no control anymore over what's happening in their lives. Nobody wants that, especially people with disabilities who know something about what it is to have maybe a loss of control in our lives sometimes. But the reality is, the harsh reality is that we will be the collateral damage from a measure like this. Many of us with severe and obvious disabilities tend to be thought of by medical practitioners as having reached a final stage where death might be expected in the near future. Many of us have seen the willingness of healthcare workers to give up on us because they do not see any point in continuing to treat us. If we go to the hospital, we bring friends. We have to. These problems already exist, and they are well documented. The last thing we need is for medical people now to have in the back of their mind, maybe it's time for aid in dying. Any doctor will tell you that medical science is inexact at best. Sometimes predictions are slightly off, but sometimes they are off by decades. And I hope that you'll read my whole testimony where I go into this more. But in the meantime, we can spend time and discussion trying to fix the proposed legislation. My written testimony lists some ways that HB 7015 still fails to protect people from abuse, and I encourage you to read it. But unfortunately, adjusting the language does not help. Proponents say that with adequate safeguards, no one is at risk. But in reality, no package of safeguards has ever or can ever be developed that will provide 100% protection from misdiagnosis, incorrect prognosis, coercion, or devaluation of the lives of people with disabilities. Proponents' repeated statements that there have been no problems with the Oregon and Washington assisted suicide systems are false, unfortunately. Kate Cheney died even though several doctors were concerned that she was being pressured by her daughter. Patrick Matheny died even though he was not physically able to take the medicine, and that's a requirement of their law. Michael Freeland received the prescription in spite of a long history of acute depression and suicide attempts. A new report from the Disability Rights, Education, and Defense Fund shows the existing safeguards are ineffective. You can read this report under Marilyn Golden's testimony, and I urge you to do that. In closing, I ask you this. Is it acceptable for some lives to be shortened because people may be acting on a wrong prognosis or because they have been pressured into making this final move? Is that acceptable so that others can exercise what they see as a personal right. The last thing my colleagues and I want is to interfere with anyone's personal choice. But when this choice becomes legislation that poses a direct threat to us, we must emphatically say no. Even if you support this legislation in concept, there is just no way to avoid having some people die for the wrong reasons. Please stop HB 7015 from moving forward. And I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you very much for your time today.